Jones here, your host for Behind the Pen. Thank you for joining me. I am an author of 14 books. I'm a podcaster, YouTuber. I run Author Assist, which helps authors with their marketing and promotion. I'm also the radio host of the Artist First Radio Network Author Assist radio show. Now, today I have two very special guests. They are Goliaths in the movie industry. We have David Wenzel and David Vando, all the way from the US. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Now, for those that don't recognize the name or recognize who you are producer, actors, writers and award-winning movie producer and writer. Congratulations, by the way, for the movie Hamlet, Horatio. I'm a big fan of Shakespeare. I'm a big fan of Hamlet itself. So when I heard about this this film, I was like, oh, how are you doing this? How's this going to work? You know, because you're telling the story in the point of view of Horatio, who, for those that don't know, was the best friend of Hamlet. And Hamlet made him promise when he was on his deathbed, as they say, well, he's lying on the floor, but made him promise that he would tell his story, tell the true story of what happened with the poison and the murders and everything that went on, and suicide and everything went on in that film. Now, here's my first question, because I watched the trailer like 10 times and it doesn't give anything away. And I'm like, how have you done this? Because it looks modern. Whereas, of course, if you're carrying on from the story of Hamlet, we're going hundreds and hundreds of years ago. So it looks modern. And I'm going to ask you first, David Vando, have you done any Shakespeare speech, dialogue, or is it all in understandable English?
The text is the original text. I have obviously altered the text to make it for a contemporary audience so they can just watch it and enjoy it as it unfolds. I have changed archaic words and substituted them with other words that would have been in Shakespeare's vocabulary. There's no modern slang or thing of that nature. And I defy most people, unless they're Shakespeare scholars and things, to know where I've made those changes.
Good for you. Yeah, you do that.
It was quite a chore. I spent a lot of time thinking about word changes, but
yeah, I can only
some
imagine.
of them were absolutely as essential. For example, I'll give you an example in the To Be or Not to Be, which is done very, very differently than you're used to. So I'm not going to tell you how it's done, but it's going to be different and exciting.
Oh, lovely.
The line is from the undiscovered country from whom's born no traveler returns. I changed that, the undiscovered country from whom's borders no man returns. Now that's an essential word change for the meaning of that speech there.
Yes, I agree.
And so I made changes like that. But I've also made scenes. I have a number of scenes that are just cinematic scenes that do not appear in the play. I've made a scene, entirely made up a scene from bits of speeches and dialogues and things between Hamlet and Horatio in entirely different moments, and put them into a whole new scene.
Oh, you devil, you. You're mixing it up, aren't you?
I'm not going to tell you which scene that is because I don't trust you. You're going to have to see this.
I'm definitely going to be watching it.
You're trying to get your listeners here to see this. So I'm not going to give away all the things because I think a lot of your listeners are just as crazy about Shakespeare as we are.
I hope
But the point is, this film is for those who are not Shakespeare.
You want new
fiction.
fans. You want to introduce Shakespeare in a different way to a younger audience.
Yes.
Absolutely.
This is
But
what I
as
wanted to ask you. You've got this, as I said before, Hamlet, Horatio. It's Horatio's point of view, telling the story like he promised he would do when Hamlet was dying. But you've got him telling the story by actually being a director of a film and filming what happened in Hamlet. So is the actual filming, when you see the actors playing out the script of Hamlet, in Shakespearean language?
Yes. But Shakespeare's play, as you know, is a play within a play within a play, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose it is, yeah.
It's a play within a play within a play. And our film is a film within a film within a film.
I love it.
Okay?
I love it.
And the third, it's as if the camera is the eye of God watching the proceedings here. Okay?
Yep.
So we have a cinematographer who opens the film on an empty soundstage, getting his camera ready for the stagehands and performers to come on. But he's also being filmed by an unseen camera. And now he films the preparation behind scenes and the film itself. So it's a film within a film within a film.
It's very arty, very arty.
Yes, it is. I must say.
Let me ask you, David Wenzel, why 20 years with this collaboration? Why did it take so long to get everything, all the pieces together?
Yeah, I originally started, I was cast as an understudy to play Hamlet with the Waterloo Bridge Theater back in 2000. And then what happened is the lead actor that was playing Hamlet went off to go do a movie. And I never thought in a million years I'd play Hamlet. So I had like literally 7 days to learn the text and go perform it. So to make a long story short, it was a short run. It was an off-Broadway run in New York. It got my feet wet, but I always felt like, I missed a real golden opportunity to explore the nature of that text the way it should be. So I reached out to David Vando, and David started to cultivate the text, and we started to look at it in reverse from Horatio's perspective. And we ended up doing like 8 or 9 off-Broadway productions that kind of cultivated the script and the idea. And there was a whole tenure of this being worked out in front of a live audience. And as David would say, we reached such a point and a pinnacle with a live audience that in order to pursue a bigger and greater audience, it needed to go to film. And that's when I reached out to David and said, I think it's time to do a movie. So, I kind of condensed and I gave you the Cliff Notes version of that for 20 years, but it's a lot of,
How many theaters did you actually play at with this
Yeah, we played at the we had one production at the St. Luke's Theater on 47th Street. It's a famous off-Broadway theater in New York City. Then we had gone to the Zipper Theater, the Zipper and Belt Theater. The Andrew McTiernan was the artistic director there, but that theater had the likes of Roger Rees. Idina Menzel would come in and perform. So it was a high profile entity there. And then we ended up actually doing another production at the Actors Chapel, right on Broadway, St. Malachy's. It's right across the street from the O'Neill Theater.
So while all that was going, you were still together working on building it up, even while you were doing these productions?
After every performance, when we were going to initiate a new kind of sequence of a production, you know, David and I, and David mainly, would get together and kind of just rethink the text. We would discuss kind of what worked on stage, what didn't. I mean, it's hard not to give away the house, because I do want the audience to see this interpretation, because it is very, very creative.
Yeah.
It's got intrigue. It's got all the elements that a film should have. So when David was saying you don't have to be a Shakespeare aficionado to get it, trust me, I have a 6-year-old kid that watched the movie and called me and literally gave me his Siskel and Ebert version and interpretation of the movie and got every bullet point correct. Wow. 6 years old. 6 can get it. So I think 16 can get it, 26 can get it, 36 can get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And one of my students, who I teach at the New York Film Academy, I teach Shakespeare there, obviously. And one of my scholarship students contacted me because I had sent him a link to see the film.
Yes.
And he loved it. And he said that his grandmother loved it too. So I said, okay, now we've got all generations. You know,
right.
That's amazing.
Right. And not to impugn upon the actors that have come before us. You have traditional productions. You know, David and I have seen pretty much, you know, Olivier, we've seen Mel Gibson. I've seen the Kenneth Branagh that's set in the Edwardian period, which is, you know, all of those are beautiful kind of traditional productions of that. I mean, the Olivier one might be a little bit more closer in terms of condensing text and making it like kind of more of a shorter and focused kind of entity without all the political stuff that happens within the realm of the play. And I think, you know, for us, you know, we were kind of like breaking new ground, you know.
Most definitely.
Yeah, and taking, I say this, you know, cautiously. We're not certainly, our goal is not to offend anyone that holds Shakespeare dear to their heart. But I think, as David would attest to this too, if Shakespeare was alive, he was such a contemporary of his time, he would have been along the lines, I think, of what we were doing too. He would have made it more innovative for the audience, you know? I mean, he could have been battling with Christopher Marlowe across the street, you know? He's doing that. Let me see. I'm going to do The Merchant of Venice. And, you know, I could, you know, that's what kind of like, I think in retrospect, when you're looking at it, because I know we've gotten wonderful, wonderful reviews. And I've spoken with a lot of scholars that have been a little like, I don't want to say prima donna-esque about it, but they were like, you know, how dare you, you know, do that? What gives you the authority
to take a classic movie like that and to,
yeah. To mess with the text. And I said, well, the authority is keeping Shakespeare relevant. The story, the relevancy is the symbolism in the play, like you just talked about, Hamlet, Horatio and Hamlet saying, I need you to live to tell the story. So in essence, Shakespeare is living through us to continue his legacy for centuries of work, still pushing it forward to a new generation.
And this is why that it's got so many awards for your film festivals, so. Because it is keeping the subject of Shakespeare, his work, his story, the Hamlet, everything alive, but ready for a new generation. And I think that's why people are really taking a real good look at this film.
And I want you to know there's no one. There may be some that are more so, but believe me, I'm a very veteran worshiper of Shakespeare since I was a teenage boy and started reading the complete works of Shakespeare when I was 13 or 14 years old. And I'm a teacher of Shakespeare. I've adapted Shakespeare for a number of other formats, including a musical version of Love, Labor's Lost for the Folger Library Theater in Washington, D.C. And
you're the man. You're the man that everyone needs to see if they want to do anything with Shakespeare.
I have tremendous reverence for the man and the text, and most of all, for the meaning behind his work.
His words and his work, yeah.
Such
you found the right person, David.
Such powerful pieces.
Totally.
He's the most moral playwright of all times.
Yes. Second to the Bible. I mean,
Well,
really.
He's married to the Bible.
Correct. The morality tales are there.
Yeah,
You know?
I mean,
Duality of good and evil.
and what we, you know, in a 4 or 5 hour stage version of the play, you can't help but tend to lose sight of the spiritual context of the piece, because all of Shakespeare's works work on multiple levels at the same time. He's great at it. There's a social level, there's a historic level, there's a psychological level, there's a political level, and all of this is going on and on and on, you know, in conflict. But ultimately, it's the spiritual level that supersedes all of these.
I have a question for you,
Yes.
a Shakespeare question. It seems that a lot of his plays, a lot of his sonnets and what have you, were all to do with the crown and castles and kings and queens and the royalties. Why do you think he did a lot of his plays in that setting?
Well, it was the style, and remember, he had royalty. He had Queen Elizabeth and King James to please and be invited to court, and King James was his, you know, they became the king's men, right? So they did stories about Henry VIII and other things like that, which would appeal to their sponsors, their benefactors. But he could also do something rowdy like Merry Wives of Windsor, and you know, there's no kings or queens there. There's a drunken Falstaff, but other than that, it's not set in court.
Do you think? I mean, there are some that say, I mean, as an author myself, I mean, we do hear our characters talk in our heads, and I admit that, so I put my hand up to that. You know, we have a little bit of schizo in us because we listen to what they say, and we follow the path they tell us, and when they tell us off and tell us, well, no, I wouldn't do that, we listen to them. So Shakespeare being a writer, and assume he went through the same thing, does that make him at all? There is stories that he could have been bipolar. How do you feel about that?
No, I don't think he was bipolar. I just think he was a genius.
Oh yeah, no doubt about that.
And we tend to make those sort of comments when we don't fully appreciate the nature of genius, right? Because genius is definable. How does a child 6 or 7 years old start writing symphonies? I don't know. You tell me whether it's just a gift from God, or was that little soul had previous life experiences and reincarnated. I don't know, but it sort of makes a good case for reincarnation. But all geniuses are unique to themselves, and their uniqueness is what manifests their genius. And they all geniuses have to be looked at from different points of view. I don't think it was a mental deformity. It was someone who had, from childhood, a series of epiphanies. Mommy, I like watching the actors, you know, when are they coming to town again?
How old was he when he wrote his first sonnet or play?
How old was he?
Yeah.
Probably in his late 30s.
Late then.
Late 30s. Shakespeare died in his early 60s.
30 years and all that creativity in 30 years. That's just amazing.
Right. Right.
But his sonnets, the main thing about Shakespeare is not the kings and queens, it's the concept of love that unifies them all and supersedes. Because in Shakespeare's world, anything that prevents people from sharing their love with one another results inevitably in tragedy. Romeo and Juliet, the parents keep the two kids away, tragedy. Iago puts a barrier between Desdemona and Othello, and what happens? Tragedy.
And in Hamlet, she commits suicide.
Yes.
Yeah. So, David, Wenzel, why was it in Horatio's point of view? Why did you pick that way to take the film?
I always felt that Hamlet's fate would end up like Ophelia if he didn't have Horatio. Poor Ophelia had nobody to bounce the things that were going on with her. Her father and the political thing and the nature of what is right in royalty and court. And, this idea of you romanticizing Hamlet will not be had. The brother leaves her, goes off to college to sow his royal oats, so to speak. I always
mother.
Right.
No
That's right. No mom. So I always felt that, the relationship where Hamlet Horatio super exceeded, it really was what kept Hamlet around.
It was a brotherly love, wasn't it? Brotherly love, maybe even more than that.
Absolutely. I mean, I think eternal soul, kinship, something that's bigger than anything physical. I mean, there's a spiritual connection. I mean, obviously there's kinship. There's like all friends, they battle back and forth in terms of their wit. And, he even says there are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophies. I mean, look at the relationship. It's crystal clear. I always felt that I saw productions that they kind of pushed Horatio to the side as just a non-real entity.
Little character, side character.
Like, oh, he's much more involved. His eyes are on everything. I mean, when we did the version of it, it would be on play in the stage. Many a times the Horatio character would be in the scene and then he would be stepping out in the wings so everyone could see him as he was still very much observing everything. Almost like, I got your back, Hamlet. You know what I mean?
I love that. That is so cool.
That's just me. I mean, people can say otherwise, but I repeatedly said that over and over and over again. I know there's productions that push incestual stuff and things to that nature. I don't really buy that myself personally. I get, the edges and let's make it a little more shocking and revealing. Some directors like to, push the political aspects of it. Some people like to push the sexuality aspect of it, but look at the text. It's so much bigger than that. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. I mean, Hamlet's so beautiful, you can put it on a football field. You can literally put Hamlet on a football field and make him the quarterback.
Well, it's important for me, and I think Shakespeare intended, is that Hamlet and Horatio are really two aspects of the same soul.
I agree with that. I can see that.
He does this sort of thing. For example, Cordelia, the Fool, and King Lear are like body, mind, and soul. In this piece, it's as if Horatio is his conscience, you might say.
Yeah.
They're really tied together in such symbolic way that Shakespeare is making a symbolic statement of the nature of our souls.
Right. I mean, also, I think too, in the text, it goes even deeper than that. Every pivotal moment when David talks about epiphanies, Horatio is there. Horatio is there in the beginning to say, I think I saw your father when,
He's the first one to see the ghost, and he knows that his closest friend is going to believe him and not think
Right.
of him being crazy and going mad like everybody thinks Hamlet is in the end, because he knows he trusts his best friend. He
Right.
knows he's going to listen to him.
And also, you know, here's a little sneak peek, because David, as the cinematographer, also plays death. To me, he plays the grave digger. That's our interpretation of death. Here's another very important epiphany moment. Hamlet, Horatio, and the grave digger. Basically, from ashes you were born, ashes you shall return. Who was that? York. I knew him. A fellow infinite jest. You know, that whole sequence. And then you have the final sequence at the end. And in Us, we've painted a picture of the Pieta, so to speak, because Horatio has the body of Hamlet in his arms as he offers it up to the light and the love to transcend the evil. I mean, that's our, I mean, that's the way that we had seen it. People can argue against it, and it's not really an argument. It's just our interpretation. That's what makes art beautiful. Your interpretation of it's going to be different, you know?
That's what makes it, it's interpretation and making it real for people to believe.
Right.
And
you know who this has inspired me one of the most in doing things like this is Peter Brook. He's just the most brilliant directors I have seen in my lifetime. And he's done such wonderful different interpretations, not only of Shakespeare, but of opera and you name it. And it's his daring and things which has encouraged me to give flight to my creative
juices,
imagination.
Well, I think also, I mean, you know, I, as an actor, I've done a lot of television. I've done a lot of film. I've done soaps. I've done campy stuff. I've done stuff that has really a deeper meaning than commercialism on the highest level. And this piece has been with me for 20 plus years. I mean, I feel like this is my Monte Cristo.
This is your soul.
This is me, Eugene O'Neill, as he, you know, his father Tyrone played the Count of Monte Cristo over and over again. This is the Hamlet thing. And all the experiences. I got to be in a room with Anthony Hopkins. I've got to work with some really incredible actors. So has David. He worked at the Metropolitan Opera. He worked with Franco Zeffirelli. He can't be influenced any greater than anybody like that visionary, because that's in this work too, by the way. When you see the frame by frame pictures, it is a visionary piece. Film is a film medium, but it's
very visual. From the trailer, you can tell it's very visual. It's very arty. Where can people see the film now? Where is it available?
Amazon Prime Video. It's on Amazon. It's on Google Play. It's on iTunes. It's on, if you have Apple TV, you can connect your device to that too. It's available on Roku. All of them, if you literally just go to your Roku box or whatever and put Hamlet / Horatio, everything's going to pop up. It's there.
That's wonderful.
We're moving to other platforms as well. I mean, we're hoping to be on Vudu pretty soon and AMC and then we'll do television and transactional and all that stuff too. But right now it's pretty much on those majors and YouTube as well, which is pay-per-view. You just have to purchase it on YouTube.
I want to
rent it. I'm sorry.
I want to thank you both so much for coming on Behind the Pen and talking about this amazing film, and I really can't wait to watch it because, like I said, I'm a fan of especially Hamlet, the film. Mel Gibson, of course, is my generation, so I hope it goes as far as it can go. I wish you huge success with it. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and all the best.
Thank you so much. What we'll do is we'll follow up after you watch it, because that's a whole other episode.